Hello there. Uh, Going off of this time the early endgame filter, I'm going to be setting up a mm, uh, late mid game, I guess, or mid game, or I'm just not going to bother with it. I'm just going to call it mid game. What I would consider as mid game is you probably still have gear raids to do. You have very little, if at all, of the tier 2 gear. And you're at a point where sets matter a little bit, but they're not they're not the defining factor here. So the tier 1 rule is not going to change, really. Apologies. Because at this point you still have spent some time in the gear raids where you're only getting mythical gear, and chances are you have a few of these pieces. Now, you don't need a whole set. You just need some of these pieces that have 3 subs. And there's really no purpose to go under that. So we're not going to touch that one. We are in the same vein of reasoning. We're probably not going to touch the heal HP rules. Uh, there's very few situations overall where actually, So I keep on going back to the same problem in this is that I'd like to be able to lock in, like I either want HP, if I have speed, healing effect, or rage regen. I mean, this is just incredibly annoying. Um, we're gonna drop out flat HP, I guess, and no, actually, this makes sense. We're gonna drop out flat HP and move to 2 subs. So this realistically means that I guess the absolute worst case would probably be a ring with rage regen and just healing effect and HP, or a healing effect with just rage regen and HP. I mean, all of these are still kind of somewhat interesting. So no, this actually does check out and make sense. CC rules do not change. Tank tank is very easy, right? Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep we're gonna keep just the main tank rule. Let's say it's going to be tank speed. Delete those 3 rules, right? We have then just this tank speed here that we're just going to, it doesn't matter. The names aren't going to be exported anyway, so I don't know why I'm bothering. Drop that. That's it. That is pretty much literally it. And we're going to also do one more thing here, is sets do not matter at this point. Okay, fine. Select all. Just because if you are building tanks in the mid game, this is still this is still the point in the game where stats over sets. And actually, speaking of, we're gonna do the same for the heal HP category. And I want to be clear that this mid game filter is going to flag a lot of um, but at that point, you still kind of need it, right? And the same is kind of true here, really. So sure, this is what we want, but we want it on really any set. Here I would go, I would actually probably do this. Any of the tier 1 sets with the right damage stats will probably be interesting at this point. Now, of course, if you can get sets together, that's great. Good for you. Uh, I know I spent a lot of time up to and including the 21 gear raids with broken sets of random stuff like this on some of the supporting cast. And it was useful, right? Um, because you only really need a few of them to have really good gear. And that was really it. This BP Ageless Harass rule is just going to get dumpstered because it's not serving a purpose. So that's gone. Dolores rule kind of just becomes everything. Uh, although, although no, we're just going to do it this way actually, because at this point you probably already have some attack and flat attack. I'm not going to make you go through all of the gear because that would be kind of excessive. The DPS defense, I mean, I'm not going to tweak this because again, if there were actual good defense-based champions that actually dealt damage, I would probably look into this a bit more. But as is, just keep it like this. Uh, and even then, like, what are you going to use this on? A gun and a codex, maybe? A Trusk and a codex, or a Trusk? I don't know. Point is, it's there. Do what you want with it. Um, EPS. So this is a bit of a tricky one in the sense that we're specifically looking at the T2. You know what? We actually are going to add these. No, no, we're not. We're looking at the tier 2 and plus gear to make sets. Now, this is solely with the optic of making sets, not just to use them. So, in that regard, right, look at, I guess we're just going to take this. What am I doing? Right? Any of the gear here. And then I think we're just going to rename this into, I don't know, broken sets. This will flag everything that we're interested in that has these three. Now, I am going to go back to my DPS attack right side here because I specifically want the T2 and plus good sets for either damage or for, I don't know, supporting cast damage. Like, I don't know, Theowen, Greed, or any number of other champs that you're kind of using, but really you're just using them so they boost your main damage dealer. And here, all that really matters is that you have. It's a bit complicated to actually. Yeah, screw it. So attack and crit damage are there. Again, I'd like a way to force crit rate or force attack speed, but there is no good way to do this besides defining a bunch of rules. Um, and that would almost make sense, except that would be a lot of. This should be fine for most cases. And honestly, considering that you could end up with decent rolls and crit rate, you don't necessarily always need crit rate on all the pieces. But although that is somewhat unlikely, it is a possibility. And this really is tedious. That one we're leaving. This one we already edited. Glacier damage, I wouldn't touch because, again, it's kind of just. Wait. Actually, this one I would touch. I would include every single of those. Chances are, again, at this point, you already have decent setups for most of the T1 stuff, and now we're trying to graduate towards tier 2 sets or possible good set bonuses. Going back down again, glacier damage I just would kind of ignore because I wouldn't even run glacier if I didn't have good glacier. So it doesn't make sense to nerf this even more. And then now we're back into the kind of free-for-all flagging everything we can to try to get good gear. Um, Again, I wish to point out here that what's important for the mid game is not to not spend time sorting. What's important for the mid game is to not miss a single piece that could improve a champion. I spent a phenomenal amount of time just doing incremental upgrades and tweaking shit to get my 321, and I am glad that I did, that I spent that time and effort as much as possible to get it as early as possible. Because the fact that I had that 321 that early meant that I was farming 321 for a very long time, which got me a lot of good gear, which then allowed me to push a lot more other content, get a lot more good rewards, and it's just a virtuous cycle, or whatever the proper expression for that is. Anywho, for tank, I would still consider keeping the sets on the left side because that's kind of, I mean, it's left side gear. Sets make sense at this point. Um, for so for left side gear, I would honestly probably just drop it to this. Right? It's a DPS gear. You're getting your crit rate in, and then you're getting some attack bonus. And anything past that is gravy, but that's the bare minimum I want on my left side gear at this stage in the game. Crit damage on the body is nice to have, but not necessary, and speed on the weapon is, again, nice to have, but really not necessary. Tank, we're not touching. Healer HP on the left side. I don't think there's any point in modifying it. Healer attack on the left side. Why do I keep on trying to edit the name, man? We're going to keep just those. Drop this down to 2. And we are going to keep our sets because, again, this is the left side. It's fairly easy to get going. And yeah, that roughly covers it. So, again, right? I really want to stress something with this filter, which I will call the mid-game filter. It's geared towards filtering through a lot of gear, rolling a lot of gear, and trying to graduate as fast as possible from that to having a good array of sets that you then just need to upgrade with only 3 substat sets, for example. And once you're there, that's great. You can dumpster this filter, which will probably be a bit frustrating for a while. But this is what's going to catch the most progress for you. And in my opinion, that's what's most important. If you want to kind of skip a step and you're kind of lazy on gear filtering, which I wouldn't really recommend. If you're interested in progress, incremental progress is going to be the way to go. It's also a lot less frustrating. If you jump straight to the early end game, or even worse, the late end game filter, you're just going to sit there for thousands of runs and not have any upgrades at all. But that's just my 2 cents. Do with this filter what you will. The code is right there as usual. It will be both in the video and in the GitHub, where I will have all 3 filters. And yeah, really, I guess that's it. So cheers, and you have a nice one.